Okay, so this session is titled How to Avoid 6 Data Quality Issues Costing You Money. Now, before we move on, I want to talk a little bit about the big picture. This particular webinar is part of a series of webinars we're putting on. So we're going to base it around one data set I'm going to introduce you to in a second. One thing I should say, we love data so much that we have got a giveaway at the end of the session. So stay to the end of the session, otherwise you'll miss what we're going to give away. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about house prices in the UK. The Office of National Statistics have collated a whole series of information about house prices in the UK. Now, if you looked at it, I'll be honest with you, it's a bit Snoresville. It's boring. It's just numbers and some descriptions and some other stuff. But hopefully part of this webinar series, we're going to try and bring that to life. So data quality. It really does sound boring, doesn't it? A lot of people think, oh, data quality, oh, nod off, okay? Our goal today, we have one goal that you will at the end of the session go, oh my goodness, data quality. That's costing me money, and here's how I can save money. How's how I can fix those issues? Now, one thing I will say, for me personally speaking, I have made mistakes when I've been looking at data and data sets. So part of what I'm trying to do today is just show you where I've made mistakes and how I've managed to avoid those mistakes in the future. So it's very much about just sharing things with you. Moving on to the format of this particular webinar, there's two of us on the session today. There's going to be myself and Joe, who is going to introduce himself a bit later on. Hope you don't mind, so hopefully a wee bit of banter between us. Now, we will demonstrate two tools today, but this is not one tool is better than another. We both love data. We both are data professionals. We work with data day in, day out. Joe has so much expertise he wants to share about Tableau and Tableau Prep in particular, and I'm really excited to hear what he's going to say today. Personally, I spent a lot of time working with PowerBI Desktop and that associated set of tools, and I'm just going to show PowerBI Desktop. And all we're really going to do is cover a couple of points, and we're going to see how we do it in each tool, because each tool is just a means to an end. Okay. Now, there are several parts that are set in our webinar today, so I'm going to introduce them to you just so you know what you're going to get, you're letting yourself in for. Okay, first point we're going to cover, we're going to talk about is what's the point, Rodger? And this is about focusing down on one particular point when you're looking at a report and why that's important. Then we're going to move on to, do you know your data? Does your data like tea or coffee? Does it like walks on the beach or the pouring rain? It might sound a bit of a silly thing to say, but we're going to think about that later on. Why it's important to know your data. Then we'll move on to data sets. Sorry, data types, I apologize. There you go. Tell us a live webinar, we make mistakes. It's great. Data types. Who cares about data types and why you should actually care about data types, why it can cost you money. And then I'm going to hand over to Joe, because I'll do the first 3 points, and then Joe's going to take over. Told you it's going to be a kind of a back and forth session, and he's going to talk about column headers and what do they mean. Sometimes it feels like you're looking at a foreign language, you look at column headers in some data sets. Then we're going to talk about, do you need that whole kit and why it's important sometimes just to focus down and filter down on data. And the last point but not least is sometimes, even though you think you know your data really, really well, sometimes you can get caught out, and Joe's got an amazing example of a data set he was working with and show you what that meant and what it did to the data set and why you should be really aware of that. Now, we are data professionals. We've got safety nets, we've got helmets, and we are ready to do a live demonstration in front of you. Believe me, we do not look forward to this because this is a live webinar and things might go wrong. But we are data professionals and we're going to do this 2 demos for you today. Then at the end, we're going to give you a chance to ask us questions. We might not know all the answers. If you do have some questions as you're going along, there is a question and answer panel, as Jane pointed out. Please feel free to go and find it. Pop your questions in there, and then we'll try and answer them. If we should answer them in the session, Jane will prompt us. Otherwise, we'll answer them at the end, so keep your questions to there. One thing I will say is that when we're doing the live demonstrations, maybe just move your Q&A panel out there, because sometimes, unfortunately, being told actually obscures a bit of what we're trying to demonstrate. So, without further ado, let's hand over to Joseph. Joseph, do you want to introduce yourself to everyone?
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Robert. As you can probably tell by the sound of my voice, I'm not from around here. I'm actually from a place called Dorset, which is on the south coast of England. This is me when I graduated from my master's at the University of Stirling a few years ago. And then I went on to work at Edinburgh Airport, where I first came across some machine learning, and that helped introduce me to Tableau and the family of tools, one of them of which we're going to be looking at today, which is Tableau Prep. And unlike Power BI, of which I'm very jealous of Robert's enthusiasm and love for, it doesn't have any visualization within it. So Tableau Prep is the tool that we use to perform our ETL, and Tableau Desktop, which some of you might be a bit more familiar with, is where we do those visualizations. And around 9 months ago or so, I joined iAcademy as a consultant, and this is my first webinar with Robert today, and I'm really looking forward to going on this data journey with all of you who are with us. So back to you, Robert. I'll pass you back over.
Wonderful, thank you very much, Joe. As I say, it's fantastic to be in such a diverse team. I've learned so much from Joe by doing the rehearsals, not by anything else, and it's just been a fantastic journey. So, who am I? Well, my name's Robert French. I'm a consultant with iAcademy in Glasgow. I've been working with data for over 10 years. I love playing around with data. These are my contact details. If you want to know anything or want to chat about data, I am delighted to chat about it. Please feel free to reach out and contact me. So let's go on with the webinar for real. So the first point, what's the point, Rodger? This particular point is about looking at reports. Very often as a data professional, people will ask me to do reports for them, and they're not always that clear in what they want to answer. They'll come and have some kind of idea. I want a report. And they'll say, yes, that's fantastic. What's the question? What's the business question you're trying to answer? And I'll start asking them questions. They'll go, I didn't really think. I just wanted the report. And very often what I'm trying to do is tease out of people to think about what they want from a report, because a report could be just answering all sorts of different questions, but a report is very often better when you focus down on one point. And when you focus down on one point, a lot of things happen. First of all, you know where you are. In this case, the dog's on one side of the table. You know where you want to get to. In this case, the dog wants to get to the cake, which is on the other side of the table, and he's completely focused on what he's trying to get to. This doggo knows, I want a slice of that cake. I know where it is, I know how to get there, I know the question I want to answer, how do I get to get that bit of cake? And that's very much how I think about reports, that you should be focusing on the end goal. What are you trying to do with that report? What's that report trying to answer? What's the business question you're trying to answer? Because there's a temptation that when you do a report, you get, oh, I have that bit of data, and I'll have, oh, that bit of data, and then I'll have this bit of data, and then I'll have suddenly, you've got this massive amount of data. And it's like, what am I going to do with all this data? But there's a very serious question. And this cat's asking, you've been in 5 minutes, you haven't fed me yet. But that's not a serious question. The question is, just because you can get all that data, should you get all that data? Sometimes it may not seem very obvious that when you look at a report, and I have seen reports where maybe just 10% of the data for that report, that Excel spreadsheet, is actually used to generate the report. But what about the other 90%? The other 90% of the data that's not being used, that is stored as part of the report, part of the Excel spreadsheet, or something else. That has to be stored somewhere. That has to be backed up. That has to be processed in some way. And that's costing you money, because you want to be focused on the report, because you want to be focused just on that single question. What is that report trying to answer? What's the business question it's trying to answer? Now, does that mean you can't look at data and explore data and turn it upside and munge around with it? Of course not. That's exactly what myself and Joe did. We got the data set from the Office of National Statistics. We started taking it apart and looking at it and playing around and fiddling with this and looking at that, all sorts of different things. But when you're finished, clean up after yourself. Make sure that the data you got for that report is just what you need. And if you can get one data set that can answer or provide data to multiple reports, then you're on to a winner. Okay, our next point. Do you know your data? I know, I said a very silly thing in introduction. Does your data like tea or coffee? And when I was thinking about this particular session, I kept going back to King and I, where the song is getting to know you, getting to know all about you. And we as data professionals, the first thing we do when we look at any data set is we try to get to know, we try to understand what's there. The first thing we'll be looking for is patterns. Are there patterns in the data, obvious data patterns? Maybe the data set is sales, and that particular company only sells Monday to Friday. So we expect 5 days, miss 2 days, 5 days, miss 2 days. So the pattern's really obvious, Monday to Friday, don't sell the weekends, Monday to Friday. Or are the patterns just a little less obvious? Maybe, for example, a data set looking at ice cream sales. So we'd expect in the summer to be this peak where the temperature goes up, sell lots of ice cream, and it comes back down, and suddenly there's another peak in the winter towards the end of December. That doesn't make sense. People buy ice cream for Christmas, don't they? So you'd expect that little unexpected pattern. Can you explain those patterns? And more importantly, when we look at data, we're looking for things we call outliers. So there's clumps of data here. There's a bit of data out there that just doesn't quite fit in with the rest of the data. So you use lovely patterns of data, and they go up and down, but you got these, what we call outliers. Data that doesn't quite fit in, that's outside. And that could skew your averages up or down. Or if you're doing a forecast and you don't account for these outliers, you haven't identified them and adjusted for them when you're doing your forecast, that means your forecast can go up or be skewed down because of these outliers you don't understand. Now, like me, would you buy a house without having a survey being done? No, of course not. I wouldn't buy a house without having a survey done, but so many businesses will base their business decisions and forecasts on data they haven't surveyed and they don't know. Don't believe me? Well, I was at a conference many years ago, not Data Scotland, that's the one I'm wearing today. I did a conference called SQL Bits, and there was a lovely lady there whose background is a statistician called Jen Stirrup. And one of the things she says, at every data set she's presented with, she'd ask some basic questions. And this was about number of days in a bed. Okay, and that particular column said number of days in a bed for each individual patient. Now, she'd ask basic questions like, what's the highest value, what's the lowest value? So she did it for this particular column, and she said she found the lowest value for number of days in bed was minus 463. No, hold a second. Number of days in bed cannot be minus. There was a mistake in the data set. Nobody else had spotted it, and it turned out it was actually a problem with the user interface. She was the first person to actually just look at the data set and ask basic questions. Now you're thinking, oh, what should I be asking? Well, here's some simple questions to start asking. What's the minimum value? What's the highest value? What's the average? How many records do you have? Do you have too much detail? If you're doing sales and you only want to know what day it was sold on, but you're recording that it was sold at 9 o'clock in the morning or 12 o'clock in the afternoon, do you need that data? Do you have any hierarchies in your data? What do I mean by hierarchies? Hierarchies are things like the year. Then you can drill into the month if you aggregate that, and then drill into the day. Or maybe you've got sales territories. So you've got a national sales manager who looks after individual territories. And you drill into the individual territories for area managers who then can drill into individual stores they sell to. Those are also hierarchies. The other thing that's very important is, do you know in your data set where you've got personally identifiable information for someone asking about a GDPR right to be forgotten? Next, data types. Why should you care about data types? It's like, boring. Well, let me ask you some questions first of all, and I'm going to take you on a little journey here. First question I'd like to ask you is, do you like spiders? I love spiders. I could talk about spiders for hours. This is a zebra spider. It's about 3 millimeters long, tiny little spider, jumping spider. Not everyone likes spiders though. Do you like ice cream? I love ice cream. I'm sure you'll have ice cream as well. If you've any children, you probably find, oh, they don't like Brussels sprouts or they don't like tomatoes. They like tomato ketchup. Now, I didn't like Brussels sprouts when I was growing up, by the way, that's the other thing. So let me ask you a question, because I'm going to take you on a journey here. I'm going to ask you two very simple questions. Does x plus d equal dx? Or does x plus d equal xd? Have a think about that. Some of you looking at that question going like, that's a trick question. I know it is, I just can't figure out what he's asking. What if I told you the answer depends? You still don't believe me, do you? Right, what is the answer? Well, it depends. If you're a computer, the first one is wrong. You're like, no, it's not. Of course it's not. Well, if you're a computer and you're presented with an X and a D, as far as the computer is concerned, they are what's referred to as a string or text value. You cannot do any arithmetic calculations with text values. You can combine them together in what they call concatenation, in which case X plus D gives you XD. Now, what you'll have done, and most other people have done when looking at this, gone, well, the Roman numeral for X is 500. The Roman numeral for 10 is D. Therefore, 500 plus 10 equals 510, which is dx. You change context. Computers can't always change context. They can't always translate a string value to a whole number. We're much better than computers, by the way. Now, if you think I'm pedantic, believe me, computers are far more pedantic than me. These are the data types we're thinking about, and it will save you time to classify your data types when you bring them into your application. One of the most horrible things I very often see when I'm looking at data sets is they'll store decimal numbers and whole numbers in a string. That's great. When you try to add the two together, the computer will say, right, okay, it's a string, stored as a string, can I convert it to a decimal or an integer value, a whole number value? Then do the calculation. That's changing context. That costs time. Now, taking this a step further, if you said to a computer, here's an apple, what if you add another apple to it? Well, the computer says, well, yeah, that's great. That data type matches that data type, so therefore I have two apples. What if you add an apple to a pear? What's the computer going to do? It's going to give you an error because it cannot, because those two data types may not be compatible. So therefore you're going to get a data professional like myself or Joe in, and we'll fix it for you, because that apple may be a whole number like 1, and the pear may be a string value like X, and it can't add them together, so it gives you an error. Now, I'm going to hand over to Joe now, and he's going to take over for the rest of this particular presentation. So, Joe, do you want to take it away?
Thanks, Robert. And that's a really great place to leave it with point number 3 on data types. And I'm going to start off and talk about column headers. And at a time at the moment where most of us will be onboarding from maybe remotely and joining an organization, we might actually be presented with a data set or some sort of analysis that looks a little bit like this. And it might just be a bit overwhelming to begin with. I mean, look at column A. What does that tell us? We've got absolutely no idea. STT underscore. A bonus point for anyone who can guess what data type that field is. And then we've got a few more columns here. Maybe that's something to do with the financial year 1920 in B. And maybe that looks like a calculation, last 12 months, but I've got no idea how it's calculated. And then finally in D, LTM actual, well, maybe that's the one I'm after. And in fact, let's imagine that we've been tasked by our new line manager to try and work out some of the underlying analysis within this data, hidden within this data. And without any explanation of these column headers, it's going to cost me a lot of time, and it's going to cost the organization a lot of money. And in fact, we'll probably start off by fumbling around in the dark like this. And this could go on for quite a few hours. Again, this is just going to be costing you and your organization time and money. I might go away, have a coffee. In fact, it's a bit more like this. Yes, I'd have far few more coffees. Maybe not as many as Robert has, but I'd have a few more. That's to say the least. And then I'd think, right, okay, I've got this. I'm going to work out exactly what those column headers are trying to tell me. Okay, so I know from past experience that those 4s at the start might be some sort of date. Okay, column B might be the sales number that we're after. I've got no idea what column C or column D is though. I don't even know if they're right or wrong. Again, this is all costing time and money. I wish that my line manager had sent me a data dictionary, and that would explain exactly what those column headers are. And then one arrives, and suddenly it all makes sense. I've got a delivery date. Okay. Oh, that was profit, not sales. Right. Well, it's a good job I didn't send some hashed analysis back. and we can remove column C, and column D becomes an explainable KPI. Okay, brilliant. Now I know what I'm doing with that 0. I know that actually it's a 0.00 and not just a null number. And the difference between that would have affected the average if we'd have looked to explore a visualization with that column. So with the help of a data dictionary, those column headers become explainable. And so it's really important for your organization to have a data dictionary, because it's going to save all of your new onboarding staff and all of your existing staff that are accessing new reports across your organization time and money. So ask yourself, do you have an accurate data dictionary? My next point is talking about, do we need all of that data? Sometimes when you're flooded in with lots of different data sources or different data types across your organization, it can feel a little bit like this. You can spend most of your day trawling through all different desperate sources and trying to pull together different reports because you know that the answer's there. And even with a really good up-to-date data dictionary, you might have created a report that's actually taking a really long time to load. And every time the end user's going in and using it, it's taking up to 10, 15 minutes for it to even refresh. And that's going to cost your organization time and money. And in fact, when you're building these reports, you might be pulling them in from here and pulling them in from there. And, oh, I need that column from over there. And, oh, maybe I'll look at Salesforce or I'll Google Marketing, or, oh, it could be over that on that SQL server. Oh, and then SAP comes into the mix, and, oh, Oracle, and now Teams as well. It can all feel a little bit too much when we're just looking to find one report. Going back to our first point, what's the point, Rodger? So that's when we need to take a step back and have an oversight and ask, do we need it all? No, we don't. Actually, what we do need to know is a bit of vision and direction to try and work out exactly which reports from which systems we need to be pulling together so that we can share that accurate data with the rest of the organization. And going through that thought process will help enable you and your organization improve your data quality. And it's going to save you time and money across your organization. And lastly, what's the hidden cost of dirty data? Well, you don't want to end up being like this guy. He's just completely shooting in the wrong direction. And so for this point, I've actually got a wee demo on Excel, which I'm just going to hop into now. This is an example that we've had from a different organization, and I've just reused our data set that we're demoing today, which is the ONS National Statistics data. Here we are. So let's imagine that we were looking to buy a house, and by assessing the data here, we'd be looking at, okay, Aberdeen looks like it's got £200,000 for an average house price, whereas Stirling's got 240. And we're assuming that column B here is clean. For those who would like a bit of Excel, this is just looking up a SUMIF and a COUNTIF here. And in fact, if you rolled this up over hundreds of thousands of rows of data and only giving it a quick glance, you might think that this is an accurate representation of the data. But in fact, on closer inspection, we can see that AB10, AB6, Aberdeenshire, and Aberdeen aren't all the same thing within the data, but they're being represented in the visualization as if they were. So once we go through a bit of data cleaning and some data quality checks, we might end up with using column A instead of column B to show our visualization of the data between Aberdeen and Stirling's house prices. And we'll just look at how much that changes when we do. We can see that Aberdeen comes all the way up to 240,000 against Stirling's 241,000 against Stirling's 240. Please excuse the automatically changing column axis there. So how many instances in your organization are you making decisions like that of dirty data? So pause, ask yourself, how many times are you sure that the data that you're making your decisions off of is correct? I'm going to hand back to Robert, who's going to take us through a demo on how some of these data quality and data cleaning exercises can actually be implemented using Power BI. Back to you, Robert. And I think you're just on mute there as well, Robert.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Joe. There you go. I told you it was a live demo, a live demonstration to a live webinar. We make mistakes as we go along. I have to say, looking at your examples, you've been looking at some of the projects I've been working on, I have to say. Now, I'm going to stop my slideshow, just minimize that, and I'm going to show you, I'm not going to show you update done because you're not interested in that. There you go away. I'm going to pull up Power BI Desktop. This is the product that I happen to work with a great deal, and I happen to really like. Now, I've got a confession to make. I both love and hate Power BI Desktop. They update it every single month, and they've changed the way you get into the product, the part of the product we're going to use, which is Power Query Editor. To find Power Query Editor, you pop up to the menu, and what you do is you click on Control Z. What you do is you click on where it says transform data, and that takes you into Power Query Editor, just in case you're wondering, like I did when they updated it, and then I forgot to look and check in the update notes. So this is a Power BI Query Editor. Now, there's a lot of data in the National House price statistic. The data set we're using, this is terrible. I'm going to just show you quickly how easy it is to import from a CSV file. The Office of National Statistics house price data set is provided as a CSV file, so it's very easy and simple to import. I'm just going to import the top 1,000 records just to show you how I did that, because there's over 120,000 rows. And rather than having you watch me load all the data and listen to me gibber away, I'm just going to show you how easily and quickly and simply you can do it. So there we go, that's me loaded top 1,000 rows. Now, in true Blue Peter fashion, I've already done this, so I'm just not going to save that. Go away, I don't want you, thank you very much. And discard the changes, and discard, wonderful. Just close this down, don't save. And I'm going to pull up the data set that I've prepared already. It's exciting. So, pop into transform data, and here we are in the Power Query Editor. And what I have here is the entire data set, all 128,000 rows sitting in here. The name of the data set is just over here on the right-hand side. It's just called UK HPI. That'll become more apparent later why I'm telling you that. There's lots of things we think about as we're going on. Now, one of the first things we wanted to talk about was, what's the point, Rodger? And that's very much about focusing down only using the data you need to use. So in Power BI in Power Query Editor, what I'm going to do, as you can see, there's one or two rows, columns in this particular data set. If I skim over to the right here, there's quite a bit of data. Okay, and we don't need all of that data. We only want to work with a couple of columns. So what I'm going to do is hold down the control button on my keyboard. Then I'm going to click my left-hand mouse button to select the columns I want to keep. Okay, so I'm just going to keep these columns, and then I'm going to do a right-hand mouse click, and I'm going to say remove other columns. Done. Fantastic. So that allows me to filter down just the data I'm going to use for my report. Okay. The next thing we talked about was getting to know your data set. Does your data like coffee? Does it like tea? Well, in Power BI, and in particular in Power Query Editor, the wonderful thing I love about it is there's multiple ways to do things. And the easiest way to get some descriptive statistics about your data is to go into the View menu. So I'll just pop up here. In the menu, there is View. There we go, just there. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop in there, go and click on View, and then I'm going to put a tick in the box in column distribution, column profile, column quality. Now, while I'm doing that, watch what happens to the data set. It's quite exciting. I love doing this because I love just watching what happens. It's just wonderful. So what it's done is added some descriptive statistics to each column in the data set. Now, depending on the column type, you'll get different descriptive statistics down in the bottom here. Okay, so that's a string. And if I go to say, for example, a decimal value, you'll notice that we get different ones. Ah, there's something wrong. And you've already spotted it, I bet you, because you're looking at my screen going, hang on a second. Robert said, and yes, Robert did say, there is 120,000 rows in a data set, but he's only showing a count of 1,000. Glad you spotted that, because down here, what happens by default, it does column profiling only in the top 1,000 rows. What I would like to do is actually change that, so it's actually doing it on the entire data set. Okay, so it's just down here, there's a little Whoops, there we go. Little pull, God, dear, oh dear. A little pull down, Control Z. There we go. Little pull down list, and what that does is it does it for the entire data set. So I just wanted to show you that while this was doing. So what it's doing just now is updating the descriptive statistics for every single column for the entire data set. So just give it a moment to catch up with me. Wonderful, it's done that. And as you can see, the descriptive statistics have been updated. Oops. And if I zoom in, you can see the count of records is 128,561. Fantastic. Now, that was great. And when Joe was we were rehearsing and Joe was demonstrating Tableau prep, I got a little jealous and I thought, I wonder if I can possibly add some more to this. And what I decided to do was I had a look around on the internet and I came across a gentleman I follow called Chris Webb. His website is blog.crossjoin.co.uk. And he described in the M language, the M language is used within Power Query Editor to extract data from data sets, transform it before you load it into the Power BI desktop file. And he said it added a new function called table.profile. Doesn't sound particularly exciting, but what it does, it takes the name of the data set and then does something really interesting. So all I did, I went inside new source and I did a blank query. Okay. If I pop in here, that's at the output. If I pop in here, there we go. I'll show you what I did. All I added, okay, oops, there is it, was I this bit at the end. I typed in table.profile, open bracket, dataset name, close bracket. No, really, that was all I did. And I gave it a moment or two once I pressed done. And what I got back was all these descriptive statistics about the data set. I was like, oh my goodness, because I could then take this data set and I could visualize it. So I'd have descriptive statistics about the data set I'm working on reporting on. So if anyone wanted to look at it, they could. Now, one of the things I also wanted to add was the number of nulls, percentage of nulls in my data set. I love working in Power BI Query Editor because so much you can do as a wizard, okay? So I just wanted to express the number of nulls as a percentage for each column. Okay, so what I'm going to do is take the null count and just divide that quickly by the total number of records. Boom, done. Now, I could add other descriptive statistics as if I wanted to, so if I could expand this, because unfortunately the built-in wizard will not give me all the statistics I maybe want. Unlike you, I'm sure you're a power user and you're saying, oh, I want to add this and I want to be able to add that. So this is one of the places you can do that. And the good thing is you can then take the standard M and apply it elsewhere. That's fantastic. Now, data types. We talked about data types and why should you care about data types? And one of the things you'll have noticed already, and you're shouting at the screen saying, Robert, there's something wrong, because, whoops, this particular data type here, the percentage nulls is not percentage. I said to you earlier that if you've got a decimal value, you can store it as a string, but you can't do calculations on that. There are a lot of things that will stop you doing. So how do you change a data type? Well, it's really simple. I'm going to change a data type in here, do a right-hand mouse click and go down to change type. There, it's popping on the screen. Change type to percentage. Okay, nothing up my sleeves. Haven't done anything. And boom, that's going to change it. Just wait a minute, it just takes a moment to catch up on me. So that's going to change it to a percentage data type. So when I pop it out into the report, I don't have to think about formatting. It's all done for me. It's beautiful. Now, just to demonstrate just how easy it is to change data types, I could take the date and I could change that to a text value or a string value. That's probably not a good idea because then you lose things like the time intelligence built into Power BI Query Editor, and sorry, to Power BI. If you don't know what time intelligence is, go and look up time intelligence in Power BI Desktop. So, data types, we've covered that. Next point we covered is column headers. It's sometimes important when you're creating your data dictionary, and I recommend you do a data dictionary for any data set you work with, is to change the column headers. That's really simple. Just click on here. All I'm going to do is to double click. I'm going to change region name to region because that makes far more sense. Boom, done. It's amazing, it's great. If I want to change average price, I could double click on it to average house price. Voila. Okay, do you need that whole cake? So sometimes you want to filter down the data. In this case here, we've got the data for the whole of the UK. Now, I live in sunny Glasgow. I love living in sunny Glasgow, and I'm possibly thinking of buying another house. So if I wanted to filter this data, now remember, I've extracted the data from the CSV, I've pulled it into Power Query Editor, and I'm transforming or changing it in some way, okay? So I want to decide I'm going to filter and only return the data for Glasgow. So if I type in Glasgow, there we go, City of Glasgow, perfect, click OK. And it will only show me the data for the City of Glasgow. And that's all it will load, nothing else. And I get 194 rows, so I can have a look at it and say, what's the average price for the house in Glasgow? So I know what I need to pay when I'm buying a house in Glasgow. Now, hidden cost of data quality, unfortunately, I couldn't find a really good example. I was really jealous of Joe. That's how well trained he is, to be perfectly honest. He's a really good data professional. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop here and I'm going to hand over to Joe, and he's going to take over and show you how to do the same steps in Tableau prep. So you want to take it away, Joe?
Thanks very much, Robert. And
Right.
I don't know about that last point there. I'm pretty sure that I struggled to find something that showed the data quality in Tableau prep as well, which is why I copped out with the Excel.
You did better than me.
In the earlier points. Brilliant. So for those of you who haven't seen Tableau prep before, there's two different tools that come under that family. There's Tableau prep builder and Tableau prep conductor. And today we're going to be looking at Tableau prep builder, and that's where we construct these data flows that Robert so eloquently created in Power BI. So first of all, we're just going to open it up as we have done here, and as we can see, we just get this little plus, he says, and it brings us up with lots of different data sources and connections that are natively available to Tableau prep. You might recognize a few that might be familiar with your organization. And then today for the demo, I'm just going to insert a text file up here. So I'm just going to click on that. There we go. And that brings it in. And the first thing that we have a look at, as you can see, is all of these different field names are being brought in vertically here with a small summary on the right of what's in each of those columns. So immediately Tableau prep's giving us an overview of what that data looks like. And that enables us to really get to know our data better. And now our first point, what's the point, Rodger? Well, we're looking to clean this data so that we can analyze the house price data set across the UK and across over time. And I think we're going to be doing that in our next webinar where we look at data visualizations. So for that, we only need a few columns, but we'll come on to that in a sec. Let's get to know our data a bit more. So I'm going to add in a little step up here, and we're just going to add in an aggregate. You might see some other ones that you might be familiar with using other tools as well. Just going to add that aggregate step in here. And now I'm down here, I'm going to have a look at average price. So I'm going to drag that across to these aggregated fields over here. You can see that it's immediately pulled up the count fields. And that's telling us that we've got 130,000 rows in the data. Actually, let's go and have a look at our minimum value. We can do that. And, oh, sorry, I've dragged in the wrong field. Not got my hard hat on, Robert. Let's go back and just drag that in there. There we go. Sorry. And you can see it's immediately summing up all of our average prices, and that is way too big. We don't want that, and that's because it's not the right aggregation that we're after. In fact, we're looking for a count. Okay, so we've got that 130,000, perfect. Now let's have a look at the minimum. So our minimum average price, 2,712. It seems cheap, but it could be plausible. And our maximum up to 1.46. Okay, that seems about right as well. Now let's have a look, and we've got some other ones in here as well, such as standard deviation and variance. But we're not going to look into those too much today. Let's just check out the median. Median's 141,000. Okay, so that field seems about right. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back, and we're just going to remove all of the other columns that we don't need, and then just uncheck that button here. So we're going to bring through date, region name, code, price, and index. I'm going to add a clean step in here as well. So now that we know that that field here, average price, seems to be correct, we'll have a look at our next point, which is the different data types. you can see Tableau's automatically recognized that date is actually a date field there. And we've got some string values and some numeric values too. And if any of these are incorrect, what we are able to do is just go in and just change them straight away out of the box here. But we're pretty happy with how they are. So what we're going to do now is have a look at column headers. So region name, just like Robert, I don't think that region name is very useful. I actually think that region is a bit more applicable here. So I'll just double tap in and enter that there. Okay, do we need it all? Well, no. Look at these little small counts of rows of data here between the 60s and the 90s. That definitely doesn't seem right. So what we're going to do is we're just going to click on each of those decades and just remove them out of our data set. And that means that the answer that we're getting to further down the line is going to be much more accurate and a bit more reflective of the data that we're looking to present. For example, now we can see that from the 90s up to 2020, there's a good distribution and a strong count of data available to us. So that's our clean steps done for that point there. And then what we're able to do is just add an output step here, and we can publish this as a data source or save it to a file. And we can do either of those and pick that up in our visualization tool in our next webinar. So back to you, Robert.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Joe. Excuse me while I clear my throat. Okay, let me just share my screen. It's such a pleasure to work with another data professional. Tableau Prep is an amazing product to use. I say I prefer Power BI Desktop, but it's amazing what I learned just watching Joe doing his demonstrations. I see it was also live. We occasionally make mistakes. So where have we got to in the webinar? Let's just summarize what we've talked about. What's the point, Rodger? That's about focusing down on the one question. Be really clear about your question when you're designing your reports and make sure your data matches that question. Only get the data you need. Point number two, we've already demonstrated it's very important to know your data, and it's very important to understand what you have, because if you don't understand what you have, sometimes you're basing decisions and analysis on data that isn't right, and you might think it's right, but can you prove it's right? Data types, why does it care? Well, at some point in the process, somebody's going to have to fix something. It might be a computer taking time, might be a data professional, myself or Joe, having to go and fix an issue. So taking care of the data types when you first import it may sound boring, but can save you time and money later on. Column headers, it just makes it so much easier. It's an absolute delight when I get a data set and a data dictionary handed to me, because it makes my job so much more easy, so much more efficient, and it's amazing what I can do with that. And sometimes it's just you need to filter down that bit of data, and I say both tools make it so simple. It's great. Tableau Prep, Power BI Desktop, it doesn't matter. Each tool will allow you to filter down just on that data you need, not just a whole data set. And sometimes even if you have cleaned your data set and if you do know it inside out, just be careful, because sometimes there's things that can catch you out, as Joe demonstrated. Our goal today was that when you talk to people about data quality, you think, no, it's not boring anymore. You suddenly realize that data quality can cost you time and money. The last thing one of the last things I'd like to say is thank you, or in Cantonese, it's one of the few words I know, is ngoy, and gracias, which is Spanish. Thank you for your time today. We really do appreciate it. We actually love talking about data. And that's the one thing I really want you to take away from this session. If it's the only thing that you remember from this session, we really don't care about the tools that we use. I think that Tableau Prep is fantastic. Joe also likes Power BI Desktop. What we are passionate about is your data. We want to help you find insights into your data, and that's what we love doing. And we love data so much, we're actually prepared to give away 1 hour's free consultancy talking about data quality to the first 3 companies that respond to the email invitation to the webinar. So get in there, you're in with a chance.